now we're on item number 11, which we can find the update in our red folder, to approve the consulting and lobbying agreement with the Sheehy Strategy Group effective September 7 through June 30, 2023. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second. All in favor? Or any discussion?
Let's discuss.
Any discussion? Yeah. Oh, Greg, there you are. Discuss.
Thank you for the opportunity to bring this before you, Madam President. The Sheehy Strategy Group is here with us this evening. And I just wanted to share with the board and the public what the executive committee's been made aware of about our interview process. When it became apparent that AB 286 was a train that was going down the track for quite some time, it became mission critical. So I interviewed several of the top lobbyists in the state of California. I called Mr. Sheehy's office. He answered the phone, which is an important first step in an interview. I told him the situation, and much unlike some of the other lobbyists with whom I spoke, he said, "Give me 2 hours." He gave me, just over 2 hours, to be fair, called back, and he had a very targeted and specific plan. But there was a matter of approving him and implementing his contract, and they said, "Don't worry about it. We're going to go to work right now." So we brought the contract before the board. The contract was approved, and several months later, we got a Herculean victory on SB 286. And Mr. Sheehy and his lovely wife, Brena, are to be thanked for that. And some of the efforts that our board members made to gather support is also critical. So we had a meeting at the direction of the president. I went to Sacramento, met with the Sheehy Strategies Group, and devised some other endeavors for the board to follow. He made it clear that there are a number of other public entities. He actually sent me 38 in Orange County that employ lobbyists for just this purpose. And I wanted to come explain the interview process and offer my personal thanks to them for the work they did and the work that hopefully they're to do in the future. So with that, if we want to take a victory lap with Mr. and Mrs. Sheehy, I'm happy to.
Let's take a victory lap.
Right.
Yes.
Let's do it.
Come on down.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for the opportunity just to say a couple words. It's an honor to work for you.
Excuse me, could the microphone
sorry.
right there? Thank you.
My voice is so loud, I just figured we'd get by without it.
We're recording.
Of course. So it's an honor to work for this board, and we're so glad that Greg called, and I'm really glad I answered the phone. I've got to tell you, I don't normally pick up phones if I don't recognize the number, but there literally was a little voice in my head said, "Pick it up." So I did. It was Greg, and you heard the rest of the story. As soon as we did go to work right away, that's true, but we couldn't actually go into the Capitol and have any formal communication with elected officials or their staff until we got a signed contract. We got that contract from you all at about, I think, 11 o'clock in the morning, and by 1:15, Brena and I were working the halls, not at the state capitol, but what we now call the swing space, which is across the street because they're doing a renovation. And we just never stopped working it. I don't remember whether it was Mary or Dr. Sparks, but one of you asked, what are our odds of being successful in getting the amendments or perhaps stopping what was an ill-conceived idea? And I think I said 1 in 3 or 1 in 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Brena and I expected that we'd be working on a veto strategy right now with Governor Newsom. But we were delighted when the bill failed to pass out of the Assembly Appropriations Committee. And we look forward to continuing to work with you. I know there's a lot of important issues that are being discussed in Sacramento that you may want to weigh in on. And we're honored to help your voice be heard. And Brena, did you want to say a few words?
No, I just echo what Tom said. It really is an honor to represent you in Sacramento, and we hope to have many more years of future representation.
And we are 2/3 of the Sheehy Strategy Group.
Yeah.
There's 3 of us, but our procurement partner was not able to make it down for this meeting.
Well, we are so honored and grateful to have you represent us And, we couldn't have navigated that territory without your savvy navigation. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
And I apologize, Madam President, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the work that you all did in contacting different individuals here from Orange County and asking them to write letters that would be helpful in the campaign, and then also in sharing those letters with us, which we used as props in our discussion. And so thank you, because it was a team effort.
Well, we're learning a lot about this process, and we really appreciate your direction and Mr. Rowland's guidance to connect us. So
we
it just,
are very
everything
grateful to Mr.
everything came
Rowland
together.
for giving us
So 286 was 286, and we're very grateful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam President, I
Yes.
have questions.
Yes, sir.
You're not dismissed, sir.
Okay.
For the record, tell us why SB 286 was a bad bill and why it was shelved.
Yeah, it was a bad bill. For your constituents here that don't know the details of it, that bill was essentially introduced in January of this year. It was actually introduced last year, but it was a different subject matter. But it was gutted and amended in January of this year. And when it was amended, what that bill did is it usurped local control here in Orange County over the election process. Orange County in California is a charter county, and Orange County has the authority under current law to determine how they want their local elections to be held, which includes the County Board of Education. And if you were to ask the Orange County Board of Supervisors, if this body asked the Orange County Board of Supervisors to pass such a resolution, you could accomplish that. It was completely unnecessary for a state statute to be enacted in order to achieve a change in Orange County's election process. So one of the reasons why that bill, in our judgment, and one of the things that we emphasized in our discussions with legislators and their staff, was that this was a local control issue, that the Board of Education hadn't asked for it, the Board of Supervisors hadn't passed such a resolution, and as such, this legislation was unnecessary and it was unwelcome. And I used just those words when I testified in the Assembly Education Committee. And I suggested then to Senator Min, who carried the measure, because I talked with him afterwards, I said, why don't you sit down and try to work this out, because this is unwelcome action on your part. Now, that alone was enough, in my judgment, to ask for a no vote on this bill. But there was another matter that folks were trying to sort of paper over, and it was this sounds self-serving, it's not meant to be, but it was your good fortune to hire us, because as part of the team, I used to be the Chief Deputy Director of Finance for the state of California. And I spent 7 years working at the California Department of Finance. I'm a bit of a budget nerd. And one of the things that was in that bill that nobody was paying attention to, or not much attention to, was the local mandate. The California Constitution says that if the state of California passes a law or a regulation, or even an executive order by the governor, that requires a local government entity, which could be the county, a city, a special district, school districts would be included, to do something different than they currently do, okay? That then becomes potentially a reimbursable mandate by the state general fund. I say potentially because when that happens, there's a process involved. A claim has to be filed through the Commission on State Mandates. And when I worked for Governor Schwarzenegger, I chaired that commission, so I knew the inner workings of it. And so when I looked at that bill and Mr. Rowland needed a plan on how we might stop it, I told him, I said, well, if we don't stop it on the policy, we're going to stop it on the fiscal. Because had SB 286 been enacted into law, Orange County, in fact, would have filed a test claim with the Commission on State Mandates. And it would have been approved because it would have been an open and shut case. And then every single election going forward in perpetuity would have become a general fund liability, which means that the constituents of every elected official in this state outside of Orange County would be paying for your elections. And once I pointed that out to the elected officials, they said, well, I don't want my constituents paying for this. I said, vote no. And when I talked with the Department of Finance, they got, they were notably concerned. So we don't know what would have happened with Governor Newsom because the bill didn't make it to his desk. But our plan was to try to stop at the legislature because we think it was ill-conceived. And if we couldn't stop it there, we were going to ask for a veto. And we were hoping that Governor Newsom and his Department of Finance would agree with us. We don't know that, but so that's the why. That's the reason, Dr. Williams.
And while we're discussing, if I may, Dr. Williams.
Sure.
You mentioned the gut and amend, and we're kind of policy nerds in a way, not quite as much as you all in terms of knowledge, but the general population may not know really what that means. Could you explain what that means?
Sure. A gut and amend is, let's say this was a bill, actual bill going to the legislature. A gut and amend means what we would do is we would first strike out every word on this page, strike every word out. And then down below it on a second page, which you have to imagine is there, we would write a new bill and we would submit those amendments. So that when those amendments went over the Senate desk or went over the Assembly desk and the bill came back in print in its amended form, it would that bill would no longer say what was here. It would say what was in the new language we put in. So in the case of SB 286, it was an elections-related bill, but it was not about the Orange County Board of Education. It wasn't about Orange County at all. It was something it was germane because it was dealing with elections. But it was in January. So the way the legislative process works, it's a 2-year process. And 2021 was the first year that bill got introduced and it didn't go anywhere. So when we got to January of 2022, the rules of the legislative process say that any bills that didn't make it out of the House of Origin in the first year, which was 2021, has a 30-day window in the beginning of the next year, 2022, to get out. So Senator Min amended his bill into the language you're familiar with, the SB 286, concerning the elections of this body in January, and it passed off the Senate floor with 31 Democrats voting for it, 5 or 6 Republicans voting no, and a couple of Republicans abstaining. But it got unanimous support from the Democrat caucus. And when it went to the Assembly, the bill got put on a shelf for several months. And it didn't really get referred out and heard in committee, I think, until April, about 4 months later. There was no action at all. And I don't know when exactly it got on your all radar screen, but I think you called, I think I got the call from Greg. It was in late June. It was just 1 week before its very last policy hearing in the Assembly, which was because when it finally got referred out of committee, it was referred to the Elections Committee in the Assembly, and then if it passed from there, it was going to go to the Education Committee in the Assembly. And once we got a signed contract from you, we were actually able to represent you publicly. Then we testified at the Education Committee in the Assembly, and then the rest is history.
So the numbers stayed the same, but all the language changed. And
Yeah,
then
the bill number stayed the same.
Yeah.
That's right, but all
Yeah.
of the language changed.
Yeah,
And the bill
interesting.
really didn't get many amendments. So when it passed from there, it was referred to the Committee on Appropriations because there was a fiscal impact because of the mandated program. And the Senate Appropriations Committee analyzed the bill and said they thought it was going to have annual costs of about $386,000. I don't know if they really meant annual or if they meant biannual, but I think the $386,000 number was probably low. There's a cottage industry that exists in the state of California. I learned this from when I chaired the commission. And once a bill like SB 286 passes in any county, once a bill that has a mandate to pass it, the consultants start dialing for dollars. And they'll get a hold of the county and they'll say, this regulation is passed or this law is passed, and we think it's a mandate, and you need to file a claim. And they're very, 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 very good at upping the value of those claims. I saw this cottage industry in action. In fact, I remember when I shared that with the Assembly Appropriations consultant, she started turning red. She said, "That's just not right." I said, "Well, that's how it works. That's the game, And so I think the number is probably low. It probably would have been a multiple of that had the bill actually gone forward and been enacted. And then, as I say, that was not a one-time payment. That would have been a payment at a minimum every single election cycle going forward in perpetuity. So those are the reasons why it was a bad idea. This is an issue that can be worked out locally here. It doesn't require San Diego County to pay for your election costs, or Los Angeles County to pay for it, or Marin County, or any other county. You guys, the people that live in this county, should pay for your election costs. And it should be under your control because you have the authority under current law to make those determinations, so there's no reason why you shouldn't.
Your county was deemed to be somewhat unique because there are 4 other counties in the state of California that also have their elections in the month of
Right.
June.
Right.
So our question was, why?
Yeah, that was our question. Do you have anything else, Dr.
Of
Williams?
course, I do.
Okay, yeah.
So from a policy perspective, the local control issue, how unusual is it that a single county would be called out in the education code? I ask that question because when I talk to some of my colleagues at other county boards of education, especially the president of the state county board association, he thought this was purely partisan, it was not necessary, it was ill-conceived. You added a lot more to that, but how common do we get, this looked like it was targeted politically against us.
Well, that's a really good question. Let me tell you what I know and what I don't know. I don't have any facts that say that it was a political action against you. That may be true. That's not what Senator Mintz testified to. It's not what his author's statement said in any of the committees in which his bill was heard. So while it's possible it could have been purely political, I can't confirm that because he didn't say that to me, and I never heard him say that publicly. So that's a matter of speculation. It certainly would appear that way, but we just don't know. On the other question you asked, which is how common is it for there to be a matter in the education code that just targets one county? I'd like to broaden that to say not just the education code, and ask the question, rephrase the question, how commonly does it happen where one county is singled out in a piece of legislation? And that does happen from time to time. It's usually a non-controversial issue. These are referred to as district bills by the member that carries them. It's usually something that the whole body would vote in support of, with all of the members of the Assembly and all the members of the Senate. It's less common, considerably less common, to have a controversial measure be authored by a representative from just one county and run it through. It does happen. I've seen it before, not necessarily in the education code. I'm not saying it hasn't happened in the education code, but I don't want, I'd want to do some more research before I said something on the record about that. But it does happen, and it does happen where it's not controversial. That's more common. But something as controversial as this was, because I read the press clippings on this, and it was not, the Orange County Register thought it was controversial, so it must have been controversial. It's not that common.
And just for the record, the Orange County Register did suggest to Senator Min that he run for the County Board of Education if he wants to change any state law.
Well, see, there you go.
And also for the record, let me put it on right now, there was never a conversation between the executive committee with Senator Min. We did have a conversation earlier, which was interesting in and of itself, but there was no conversation ever about this issue with Senator Min, so that he never reached out to the other side of the aisle.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I did speak with Senator Min about this. He was very friendly with me, and I told him I'd be seeing more of him.
Excellent. Excellent. Any other questions or discussion? Thank you for your thorough work. We really appreciate you explaining everything, and we appreciate your hard work and tenacity on this issue and future issues.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you.
Pleasure, and thank you for coming down. Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second, and now, barring any more discussion, we will go ahead and put it to a vote to approve the consulting and lobbying agreement with the Sheehy Strategy Group effective September 7, 2022 through June 30, 2023. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Welcome again. Do we have any legislative updates from anyone? CSBA, CCBE, NSBA, Capital News, or School Services?
I think we got the best legislative update ever
I think
from
so,
the
too.
Sheehy Group.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Do you have any additional? No?
No.
Okay, good. Oh, yes.
I would probably know this.
Excuse me.
Can you
need
come
to
up to the-
mic.
You get your steps in today too.
The board and staff here probably already know this, but the legislative session has ended, but there are about 500 bills that have been sent to Governor Newsom Not all of those are ready to present to the governor yet because they go through a process called embossing and engraving, which is a fancy way of just saying they're making sure there's no typos in the final language of the bill jacket. And the governor has until midnight on September 30th to either sign bills, veto them, or let them become law without his signature. It's very rare for a governor to let a bill to become law without their signature, but it happens on occasion. There's no telling when he'll sign different bills. Some of us thought he was gonna, there were some pretty big bills, there were big policy bills, big bills politically, and he signed them right away instead of waiting till the end. So I don't know which particular measures you might still be interested in, but I think that the governor will keep us guessing right up to the end of this month. So,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Tom, do you have a list of these bills? Maybe you can get to all of the board members so we can look at it?
Of all the bills that are enrolled, I can produce such a list.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. That'd be good to
Yeah,
look at.
absolutely, when I get back to my office.
Okay.
Yeah. And certainly the ones that would apply to
Tom,
us.
I would only be interested in the ones that you think are relevant for us, not the whole list.
Of course, relevant.
I'll see what I can do.
Yeah.
I'll see what I can do.
Whatever's easiest for you, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll see what I can do.
That would be
All
great.
right, very good. Anything else?
No, thank you. That's wonderful, having our real legislative updates. I love it.